Welcome to another project. In this project, we are going to create a random image feed. As you can see in the final version of the project, we start with 6 images. When we refresh the page, we see new random images each time. We also have a button at the bottom of the page. When we click on this button, we can see new images being added to the website. We're going to use a website called Lorem Picsum to get the images. So I'll see you in the next section for the HTML part of our project. All right, let's start our project. First, we open Visual Studio Code. Here we close the Get Started tab, and in the File menu, we click on the folder icon and then click on Open Folder. I would like to create the project on my desktop, but you can create it anywhere you like on your computer. So we click on Desktop, and here we click on the New Folder button to create a new folder. We name the folder, for example, Random Photos, which is the name of our project. And here we select that folder. We close the Get Started tab again. And here on the left side, in the Explorer section, we create an HTML file. So we right-click and then click on New File. We name the file index.html and press Enter. Now on the right side, we have our index.html file, which is completely empty, but we can use an exclamation mark to generate an HTML5 boilerplate. So we type an exclamation mark and click on the first auto-suggestion. We can use Alt-Z to turn on word wrap so we can see the code clearly. Here we have our HTML5 boilerplate, including a doc type, which tells the browser what version of HTML we are using. For HTML5, we just need to have the HTML element here. Then we have the HTML tag, which is the top-level element in the HTML file. The lang attribute here sets the language of the page.
In our case, the language is English.
Next, we have the head tag and also the body tag. In the head tag, we have 3 meta tags and also a title tag. The charset attribute defines the HTML character encoding, and UTF-8 is recommended by HTML5 because it contains nearly all the characters and symbols. Then we have this meta tag, which tells the Internet Explorer browser to use the most recent rendering engine, which is Edge. This viewport meta tag tells the browser how to resize the page. And the first part actually tells the browser to set the page's width to the device's screen. For example, the screen of a mobile device is smaller than a computer screen, so the width will be smaller as well. And then we have the initial zoom level of the page, which is, in our case, 100%. Next, we have the title tag, which sets the title of the page. In order to see the title in the browser inside Visual Studio Code, we can use the Live Preview extension. So we right-click and then click on Live Preview and Show Preview. Here on the right side, we have our browser, which is completely empty but shows the title document. Now let's change the title. Let's first close this Explorer section by dragging this line to the left, and then we'll change the title to Random Photos. Now we can see random photos in the title section in the browser tab bar. Let's decrease the size of the browser, and in the body section, let's add a container that will cover all the images on our page. We could just say container, but let's make it more specific by calling it image container. Image container. And here we click on the auto suggestion to create a div with a class of image container. For the images, I would like to use a website called Lorem Picsum to get some random images. So we go to our desktop and click on Google Chrome. Here we search for Lorem Picsum and we press Enter. Yeah, I missed the S. So in the first result, we have a website called Picsum.photos, and the name of the website is Lorem Picsum. So first we click on this website. If you read the tutorial on the site, you'll see it's very easy to use. You can use this link to get a photo with a size between 200 and 300. If we copy this, open a new tab, paste the link, and press Enter, we get a photo. And if we paste it again, we get another photo. If you want the photo to be square, for example, 200 by 200, you can use this link. So let's copy this and test it. We get a square image each time we paste this into the browser. All right, that works nicely. Sometimes the browser caches the photo and keeps showing you the same image. To avoid this, we can add a query at the end like random1, random2, and so on. That way, we always get what the browser treats as a different image. So we need these kinds of tags in our HTML. So we copy these two tags and go back to our Visual Studio Code. Then we paste the link, and now we can see two different images here. But we don't want the images to be this size. We just want them to be 300 by 300, so we delete the 200 section. As you can see now, we have a bit too much content on the page. Let's add another image. So we copy this using Alt-Shift-Arrow down, and we change this 2 to 3. Now we get 3 images. And after this container, we add a button. We add a button with a class of btn.
btn?
And inside the button, we just write load more. So here we choose the auto suggestion. So we get a button with a class of btn that says load more at the end. We're going to use this button to load more images from the website using JavaScript. And in the next section, we're also going to use CSS to style our project. So see you in the next section. All right, in the last section, we finished the HTML part of our project. In this section, we're going to continue our project by working with CSS. First, we need to create a CSS file. So we open the Explorer section using Ctrl-Shift-E. On the left side, we right-click and select New File. We name the file style.css and press Enter. Before styling our project with CSS, we need to add a link to the CSS file within the HTML code. So we go back to the index.html file, and just under the title tag, we add a link tag. We just type link and click on the third auto-suggestion, the one for CSS. Now we have a link tag that creates the relationship between the HTML file and the external style sheet. The href attribute defines the destination of the link. And as both files, I mean index.html and style.css, are located in the same directory, we just need to write style.css for the URL. Now we can use CSS in our project. So we save this file and we close the Explorer section by dragging the divider line to the left. Then we widen the editor area a little bit and go to the style.css section. First, we start with the body section. So we write body and open a set of curly braces. First, we remove the default margin using margin 0.
0?
Then we can use display flex to bring the items toward the center. To align them horizontally, we just write display flex. As you can see, the button moved to the right side. We can use flex direction column to bring the item back toward the bottom of the screen. Then we can use align items center to bring the items to the center horizontally. As you can see, the button is now in the middle, but the images are still on the left side. We can decrease the size of the image to help fix this problem. Or, we can handle this using the image container class. So we just target .image container. And we can use text align center to bring all the images into the center. As you can see, when we increase the size of the browser, we have 2 images. And when we decrease it, we have 1 image. So it's already responsive. Now we just need to target the image and make it look a bit more beautiful. Let's start by changing the background color of the body using the background color property. We just choose the color. I would like to choose the color called brown.
Oh.
Yeah, the brown color looks fine. Then we change the image. Just write image container img. We target this img tag inside the class vertical img container. So we can add a margin, just set it to 20 pixels. Maybe that's a bit too much. Just 10 pixels is fine.
Yeah.
Next, just change the border radius. We add a rounded border around the images using border radius, and we set it to 10 pixels. Now let's add some box shadow. That way we add a shadow effect around the elements. The first value of the box shadow property is the position of the horizontal shadow. We set it to 0. And then we have the vertical position. That's the position of the vertical shadow. We set it to 4 pixels. You can see the darker shadow here. We set 8 pixels for the blur, and the last value is the color of the box shadow. We use the RGBA function, and we set 0, 0, and 0 for the red, green, and blue values, which gives us the black color. And then we have the alpha value. We set it to 0.3, which is 30% transparency. Next, let's add some background color. We just use light gray. You cannot see the background color because the width and the height of the image are not defined yet. So we'll just set the width to 300 pixels and the height to 300 pixels as well. This background color helps when the image hasn't loaded yet. It's kind of a preloader for the image as well, especially when we have many images and we can still see the background color. All right, let's set up the button styles here. So we'll target the class of btn. So we'll just write .btn. We'll remove the default background and set the background color to be, for example, slate blue. Then we'll remove the border. So we'll set border to none. And then we'll add some padding. We'll set 10 pixels for the top and bottom padding and 20 pixels for the left and right. Let's add some margin and set it to 20 pixels. You can see the button here. Let's change the color of the text to white. Then let's add a border. The border. We'll round the border of the button using border radius. We'll use just 5 pixels. And we can add some box shadow as well. So we'll add a box shadow.
0%.
We'll use 0 for the horizontal shadow. That's the position of the horizontal shadow. We'll set 4 pixels for the position of the vertical shadow and 8 pixels for the blur. We'll use black with 30% transparency. All right, let's change the cursor to pointer. So when we hover over the button, we see a pointing hand. Then let's also use the :hover pseudo class. So we'll change the opacity of the button when we hover over it. So we'll set the opacity to 90%. So you can see a little bit of change. All right, that's it for the CSS part of our project. In the next section, we are going to make these images load dynamically. And when we click on the button, we'll be able to see more images loading inside our website. So see you in the next section. All right, in the last section, we finished styling our project using CSS. In this section, we're going to add functionality to our project using JavaScript. We're going to add an event listener to this button. When we click on this button, we can see new images coming from the Lorem Ipsum websites, and we can keep loading images on and on. So first, we need to create a JavaScript file. So we open the Explorer section using Control-Shift-E, and on the left side, we right-click and then click on New File. We name the file index.js and press Enter. Before using JavaScript in our project, we need to add a link to the JavaScript file within the HTML code. We go back to the index.html file, and right at the end of the body tag, we add a script tag. We just type SC and then click on the second auto suggestion. src defines the destination of the link. So as we have index.html and index.js in the same directory, we just need to write index.js for the URL. Now we can use JavaScript in our project. The first thing we need to do is to select this div with a class of image container and store it in a constant in our JavaScript so we can add new images using the createElement method. Because we have a class here, we need to get the element using the query selector method. We go to index.js, create a constant, and call it image container element.
And
we just write document.querySelector to return the element. The CSS selector is .imageContainer. It's the same as here. We can use Alt-Z to turn on word wrap so we can see all the code. And we can also close this Explorer section so we can see the code clearly and have more space for our browser. The other thing we need to select is this button so we can add an event listener to it. The button has a class of btn, so it's the same as above. We just create a constant and call it btn element. And we add document.querySelector, and inside the parentheses we use .btn for the class CSS selector. All right, so we add the event listener to this button first. We just write btn element.add event listener, and the event we want to listen for is click. So when someone clicks on the button, we want to trigger a function. We just add the function here. To see that it's working, we can use console log and just log the word clicked. So we open the console using this hamburger icon, and we click on the Open DevTools pane. Now in the console section, if we click on the button, we can see clicked each time we press it. Next, we create a function here. We'll just call it add new images. And what this function does is add more images to our container. So in order to create an image element, we just need to use the createElement method. So to make a new img element, we just write document.createElement. And the element we want to create is img, and we also need to set the source for the new img because img has a src attribute. So for the source, we just say new image element.src equals the same base URL, but we want to change this random number. So we copy this, the first link, and we paste it here, but we put it inside a pair of backticks. That way we can generate this number randomly. So instead of the number 1, we create a variable using the $ and a pair of curly braces. And we create a random number using Math.random. We want this number to be between, for example, 0 and 2000. So we multiply it by 2000. But this number is still a decimal because Math.random gives us a random number between 0 and 1. So this number is not rounded yet. In order to round the number, we need to wrap this inside math.floor. So in this case, the final number will be between 0 and 2000. So now we create the image and set this src. Now we can add it inside the container. We just use the image container element that we got earlier and call append child on it. So we're going to append the child, which is this new image, and we pass new image here to append it as a child. So now whenever we click on the button, we call this add new images function. So now we have 3 images, and when we click on load more, we see 1 additional image appear each time we click. To load more images at once, instead of adding only 1 image, we can put this inside a loop. So we just create a for loop. Let me do that again. So you just type for, then click on the for loop auto suggestion. Now we have an index that starts from 0 and should go up to the number of images we want. So we just use image number, and we set this image number before calling the function. We just say let image number be, for example, 10. So in this case, we're going to create 10 images, and inside this, instead of using this constant, we put our function. So we cut the function using Ctrl+X and paste it here. Now each time we click on load more, we get 10 more images. It's not working right now. Let me check what's going on. The reason it's not working is because we set this variable with let, and this variable is not accessible outside this function. We just need to remove this let. Now when we click on load more, we get 10 new images each time. Next, let's increase the number of images we have at the beginning to, for example, 6. So we just copy this 3 more times using Alt-Shift and the down arrow. Then we simply change these to 4, 5, and 6. Now let's open this in the browser using the hamburger icon and clicking on Open in Browser. So when the page is loaded in the browser, let me close this and decrease the size. When the page is loaded at the beginning, we have 6 images, and when we click on Load More, we can see more images loading each time, and we never get a repetitive image because we are creating a random number between 0 and 2000. Actually, it's still possible to get a repetitive image, but it's less likely. Yeah, that's it for our project. I hope you enjoyed it and learned some new things. See you in the next project.